What is going on, everybody? You're listening to Chopping Up the Meat, the one and only podcast of your dreams. Today, you're with
Right Guy
and CC
and myself, Big Mike. In this week's episode, we'll be discussing Kurt Vonnegut's book Slaughterhouse-Five once again, as well as a summary of chapters 4 through 7, and as well as a little explanation as to what's going on. As we continue to dive deeper into this very unusual book, as we've seen, we continue to see Billy Pilgrim's state becoming worse and worse, and his obsession over the Tralfamadorians become greater and greater. That word is way too hard.
Yeah, it is.
His time traveling has increased many times over, and many things are revealed to him that will be discussed in a moment. As we explore this very, very weird book, we hope that this podcast helps you understand the book in its entirety, since it is very confusing. We'll be right back with the juicy stuff, since these chapters have so much, but for right now, we'll take a quick commercial break, so sit tight and do not go anywhere.
That was Kashmir by Led Zeppelin, which kind of connects these few chapters in a way. It talks about traveling through time and space, which is exactly what Billy Pilgrim covers in these chapters. In chapter 4, Billy's captured by the Tralfamadorians. He knows, through his flashes in time, he knows what's going to happen, or he believes, for some of them he believes he knows what's going to happen, because some of the stuff he sees isn't always accurate. Like, he sees the day of his daughter's
It's like an illusion or some sort.
Some of them are illusions. Some of them he does actually happen.
So.
Which is it's confusing because it's hard for him to call what is actually true.
Yeah,
He believes it's all true, but
it's hard for the reader too to pick that up, whether it's something that actually occurred or something that he's
hydrogen bomb in Chicago or freaking
right.
whatever. He sees that the day of his daughter's wedding and he will be kidnapped on the day of his daughter's wedding by the Tralfamadorians. He watches a documentary on World War II backward and forward. He is captured in his backyard and converses briefly with captors, asks why me, and they explain to him that it's just how it is. In chapter 5, Billy reads Valley of the Dolls in this sort of zoo enclosure, and learns that the Tralfamadorian books are very different than human books. They're read by telegram likenesses. Back in present time, or so it seems like, Billy admits himself into a mental hospital. He seems to find life sort of meaningless, very depressed. Which is how any veteran is going to tell you. How
When we come back from what we talked about last week, the PTSD and how it affects the thought processes and your psychological state. And
I think that'll be a reoccurring theme in this book, definitely, because it seems like this PTSD is really taking a toll on Billy.
Time travel is very evident in this chapter, as he goes from his bed in the hospital to the prison camp and then back to the zoo enclosure with the Tralfamadorians. When he's in the hospital, just falling asleep, dozing off, he doesn't know where he's going to wake up. He's going to wake up anywhere.
very unpredictable. Between those recurring places that he's been to, it seems like he won't go to a new place. It's only places that he knows he will end up in. When they're talking about when he got sent to prison camp, and then it's between those three places mainly in this chapter, between the prison camp, prison bed, and back into the zoo enclosure with the Tralfamadorians. And when he's with the Tralfamadorians explain how everything kind of happens for a reason, which actually will tie into our next topic, but we'll get that later. And throughout this entire reading from 4 to 7, it shows that Billy, or maybe Kurt, we don't know yet, he starts to get a little more insane as time progresses.
Yeah, it's getting worse for sure.
Billy gets his mind blown by the Tralfamadorians a few times. They explain to him how they know the universe will end with their pilot when a Tralfamadorian pilot, will accidentally blow it up. They also explain that there's many different sexes within the human race, and 5 of them can only be seen through the fourth dimension. They explain that war is inevitable everywhere and it will happen. And back with the Tralfamadorians, the aliens bring Billy a woman named Montana Wildhack to be his mate in the enclosure.
Why would they need a mate with him? Are they trying to reproduce the human race on another planet? Well, yeah, why? I was actually asking myself while reading this, what was the point of bringing another human who's going to ask the same question that the why me question? Don't you think why she's going to ask why me?
Have you guys ever seen one of the old Planet of the Apes movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like when the humans come out and then like the apes are all just like they got them in these cages and they're like what are these people
Yeah.
and they're studying like it's just like that they're trying to look into them and answer questions about them.
Exactly.
In Chapter 6, Billy wakes up in his prison bed after taking morphine the previous night and finds 2 lumps inside the lining of his coat that can apparently work miracles, but only if he doesn't ask any questions about them and wonder like why they're there. He wakes up again in the company of Edgar Derby and Paul Lazaro. Lazaro says revenge is the sweetest thing in life, and he also warns Billy that he will avenge Roland Wary from his final wish, saying that to avenge him after the war. Tells him like try not to answer the doorbell after the war.
Wait, going back to like the lumps, like doesn't it kind of like relate to like when in chapter 1 was reading the biblical story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and like he like Billy Pilgrim relates himself to Lot's wife when he like Vonnegut opens up the Gideon Bible and reads the story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Although the firebombing of Dresden, see like a destruction, like just like Sodom and Gomorrah, he relates himself to Lot's wife because they both kind of wanted to see what was going to happen, and the part of the tale of Sodom and Gomorrah that interests Vonnegut the most is about Lot's wife, which he relates himself to, who looks back at destruction even though she, what was it, assault? She was turned to salt, a pillar of salt, right? Yeah, that's what it was. And as punishment because God told him not to look back at the fire that was going on. Billy, now turn back not away from Vonnegut, but Vonnegut praises her for knowing her fate and looking back anyway. She knows that if she looks back, but she still wants to.
Yeah. There's
And
always the temptation.
Yeah, so well, it's like it provides a sort of like I don't know how to explain it, like a counter to Billy Pilgrim. Like he like is very thankful for like the existence of the lumps, as he says in the book, and like feels almost like he has a lot of curiosity and temptation to find out more, just like Lot's wife, and sorry, he wants to see it with his own eyes. He doesn't want to keep it in his mind. He doesn't want to have any unanswered questions. That's
I never looked at it like that, but that's all right.
in like relation to Lot, like Lot's wife. Back in chapter 1, he's talking about open up the mind.
But back to Billy's flashes, he sees himself as a very important man in the future, and like he said, I believe he said something about like a Messiah-like figure, like almost like Jesus.
There's a lot of biblical like correspondence,
like you just mentioned.
In his head, like he doesn't realize that most people are looking at him like he's crazy when he thinks like what he's doing is somewhat like saving everyone or something like that.
He also sees his death, and he's giving a speech at a baseball park, and he's assassinated with a high-powered laser gun in 1976, which I don't know how you prepare for.
Yeah.
And then after this experience, seeing that, he goes back to 1945, where he is shipped to Dresden with the rest of the American soldiers, including Kurt Vonnegut. They are marched through the city to a slaughterhouse that is used as their quarters.
It reminds me of like when Stan Lee puts himself
Yeah.
into like the Marvel
Yeah.
movies,
Yeah.
like he creates the Marvel. Like there's that one tiny little part that you'll see him.
Yeah.
Like he's like a janitor or
Yeah.
a bystander in some ways. That's what I thought of instantly when I heard Kurt Vonnegut was on the train with him.
Yeah. I mean, I also thought, since there was speculation that Billy Pilgrim could be Kurt Vonnegut, so like I don't know if this is just like Kurt Vonnegut saying, like describing the story from a different perspective and then using himself. I mean, he could still be Billy Pilgrim for all we know. He could just be using himself just because he wanted to.
Exactly.
So in Chapter 7, 25 years after Dresden, Billy boards a plane heading for Montreal with other optometrists and his father-in-law being one of them. According to the Truffaldorians, Valencia and her father are machines like all other plants and animals. On the plane ride, some of the optometrists get together and like have this little band going on, and they play a Polish song, which makes Billy remember an execution by hanging he saw in Dresden, in which a Polish man was lynched for having sexual intercourse with a German woman. Then Billy dozes off to 1944 when Billy told Roland Wary that the Three Musketeers must go on without him, just for a short little glimpse of that. And then he comes back into the plane, which crashes into Sugarbush Mountain in Vermont, which Billy first saw the plane crash and he moved and crashed.
News is coming.
And Billy suffers a fractured skull but survives.
Which that makes his mind even go.
Yeah.
So which actually stimulates the time travel even more.
Yeah.
And so it affects his psychologically even more because of the head injury.
Yeah. And then he's saved by Austrian ski instructors who take him to be operated on by a renowned neurosurgeon. The operation takes 2 days, during which Billy is unconscious. He dreams during that time, like when going back to Dresden to their first glimpse. He sees their first glimpse of a naked woman back in Dresden, and he also flashes to a Sear factory when they were prisoners of war, where they were working. They're starving there, and when they secretly eat the syrup, they're so malnourished that they almost like cry of joy because they get to taste that. And that's our summary of chapters 4 through 7.
So we'll take another commercial break real quick, and we'll get right back into it right after this.
Some people call me the space cowboy. Yeah. Some call me the gangster of love. Some people call me Maurice. 'Cause I speak of the pompous of love.
That was The Joker by Steve Miller Band, just relating to the first line about being a space cowboy. Oh, with Billy Pilgrim, just wanted to throw that one out there. Now we're going to talk about the Trelfandorians' concept of time and free will throughout these 4 chapters that we read. It was 4 chapters, yeah.
Yeah.
And so these aliens explain to Billy when he's in the zoo enclosure, when he's going back and forth, that everything, I guess, happens for a reason, like I think the cliche saying in our world, everything happens for a reason. And people relate that back to God, like God has a plan for everyone. But maybe it's that.
For Billy, it is.
Yeah, at least for Billy, yeah. It's easy to accept things that are to come if everything is structured in a specific way and like how it should be, just like events in someone's life. Like we're talking about how
That's
the
exactly
plane
what Billy-
crash, those things happen for a reason according to the Trelfandorians, and Billy believes them. What were you gonna say?
When Billy sees himself getting assassinated, like he knows he doesn't even like bother saying like, "Oh, how am I going to change this?" Like he sees it as like
He goes,
what it is. He accepts that.
The Trelfandorians also explained to Billy that there is no such thing as free will. Like everything is set. Like for example, the choices people make or the actions, events are all inevitable, and like they're not spontaneous. Like they're happening for a reason. And so like Billy explains that like everyone should have like the "so it goes" quote unquote kind of attitude that everyone should live by. Like he discusses in these chapters that if you accept that these things will happen, it will be easier for you to live life. I don't know.
When the moment actually comes, you'll like be ready for it, so life will be easier. I think that's what he's.
And so when Billy comes back to like the present time, which we think is present time, which we perceive as the present time, when he's like being the optometrist, he brings these kind of concepts that the Trelfandorians explain to him to the world for everyone to hear. Although he willingly chooses to bring these stories and concepts to the public, it is a little bit ironic because Billy exercises his free will in order to explain that free will is in reality ineffective, which is it's a contradicting kind of standpoint for him to do.
I don't know if I really would agree with that. And then going back to what he's saying about like accepting what you know is going to happen, I can't imagine that would make life easier, because have you ever had that like situation where you know something's going to happen to you and like you've been freak out about it all day?
Yeah,
like that makes it way worse. I don't really get the concept of that.
Billy explains that the world we live in, or the world that we perceive that he lives in and that we live in today, it's a dangerous world if it doesn't have free will, or that we don't perceive that we have free will. Especially when no one claims responsibility for their actions, because it becomes like to a sort of standpoint where like if we don't have free will and no one claims our actions, how do we go about living in a just society? that holds people responsible for what they've done.